Have you ever caught yourself turning down an invitation? Not because you're busy, but because you simply didn't feel like being around people? Maybe someone suggested a get-together, and instead of feeling excited, you felt a little tired, a little uninterested, or maybe just more comfortable staying home. And you thought to yourself, why do I feel this way lately? I used to enjoy these things, If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, what you're experiencing might be completely natural. As we get older, something begins to shift, not just in our bodies, but in how we see the world, how we process emotions, and how we relate to others. And one of those shifts often includes the feeling of wanting a bit more solitude. Not because we don't care about people anymore, or because we're becoming antisocial, but because the way we connect with others, and what we need from those connections, begins to change. The truth is, there are psychological reasons behind why we sometimes start to avoid people more as we age. And today, we're going to talk about those reasons in a warm, honest, and down-to-earth way. So if you've ever felt guilty for wanting more alone time, or worried that your world is shrinking when you find yourself saying no more than yes, take a deep breath. This conversation is for you. Let's begin with something that might hit home right away. You value your time more deeply than ever before. When you're younger, you have a sense that time stretches on endlessly, like there's always another opportunity, another event, another person to meet. But once you've lived through 6 or more decades, you start to feel time a little differently. It becomes more precious. You realize how quickly the years move by, and that realization naturally changes what you choose to give your energy to. So, when someone suggests spending time doing something you're not particularly interested in, or when the company doesn't feel meaningful, you might find yourself politely declining. It's not because you don't like the person, necessarily. It's just that you've come to understand your own limits and preferences. You don't want to waste time on superficial small talk or relationships that don't uplift you. You've learned that not every invitation needs a yes, and not every person deserves a place in your inner circle. That kind of clarity is something that only comes with age and life experience. Another reason you might find yourself pulling back socially is because your tolerance for drama and negativity has decreased, and that's a good thing. When we're younger, we often put up with a lot in the name of keeping the peace or staying part of a group. We might bite our tongues when someone is rude, or sit through conversations that drain us just to avoid rocking the boat. But as you grow older, that tolerance begins to fade. And in many ways, it's one of the healthiest changes that can happen. You start to recognize how much emotional energy it takes to deal with difficult people, and you start choosing peace over chaos. You'd rather stay home with a good book or take a peaceful walk in the neighborhood than sit at a table listening to gossip or complaints. It's not that you're avoiding people. It's that you're protecting your emotional well-being. You've realized that your peace of mind matters, and you're willing to set boundaries to protect it. That's not selfish, that's wise. Sometimes, too, the change in social behavior has to do with the emotional weight of loss and change. As we move through life, we inevitably experience loss of loved ones, friends, spouses, even pets. We go through transitions that leave emotional marks. Retirement, health challenges, kids moving away, or downsizing from the family home. These all affect how we feel inside, and often, they change how we relate to others. When someone has experienced significant loss, it's common to become more introspective. The heart needs time to process, to heal. And sometimes, being around too many people or certain types of energy can feel overwhelming. It doesn't mean you're depressed or unsociable. It simply means your spirit is tender, and it's asking for a little quiet, a little space. Grieving isn't always about death, either. Sometimes we grieve stages of life we've passed, or versions of ourselves that no longer exist. We might find ourselves feeling nostalgic, or even disconnected from conversations that once felt engaging. And when we feel that way, pulling back isn't a weakness, it's a form of self-care. You're giving yourself room to feel, reflect, and adjust. It's also worth mentioning that social energy changes with age, just like physical energy does. When you were 30 or 40, maybe you could go to 3 events in 1 week, chat for hours, or even host a big party. But now, just the idea of that might make you want to take a nap. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Socializing takes energy. From remembering names and stories, to being attentive in conversation, to navigating noise and activity. It's work. Enjoyable work, sometimes, but still work. And as we age, we often become more selective about how we use our energy. Just like you might choose to rest instead of taking on a big house project, you might choose solitude over a large gathering. It's not because you've become antisocial. It's because your energy, your bandwidth, has shifted. You might enjoy deeper conversations with fewer people or quiet moments with close friends, more than big groups or unfamiliar faces. There's also something empowering about getting older. You stop trying to please everyone. And with that comes the ability to say no without explaining. In your younger years, you might have said yes to things out of obligation, joining a club, attending a meeting, hosting a dinner, just because you didn't want to disappoint anyone. But now you understand that your time, your peace, and your personal space are not things to give away lightly. That kind of wisdom is something many people spend decades trying to reach. You've likely also noticed that the way you connect with others has changed. When we're younger, a lot of our relationships revolve around shared experiences, working in the same office, raising kids in the same neighborhood, attending the same events. But in retirement or after the kids are grown, many of those shared experiences fade. Some friendships naturally drift apart, not because of conflict, but simply because life moves people in different directions. That's normal. And it's also okay to feel a little lonely when that happens. It's okay to miss certain friendships or wonder where everyone went. But it's also a chance to explore new types of connection, maybe with people who share your current interests or your current stage of life. Maybe it's a walking group at the park or a neighbor you've always meant to talk to. The key is giving yourself permission to redefine what connection means to you now. What's interesting is that the deeper into life we go, the more we crave authenticity. And that's another reason why we might start to avoid people more as we age. We're no longer interested in surface-level relationships or empty conversations. We want realness. We want depth. And we want connection that feels genuine, not just out of habit or convenience. You've probably noticed this in your own life. Maybe you've had a friend you've known for decades, but lately, every time you talk, the conversation feels forced. Or maybe you're part of a social group, but when you leave the meeting or event, you feel more drained than fulfilled. That's your inner self letting you know something has shifted. You no longer feel the need to maintain relationships just because they've always been there. And again, that's not cold. That's clarity. It's a bit like cleaning out a closet. Over the years, we hold on to clothes we don't wear anymore. Maybe they fit a younger version of us, or they had sentimental value, but they no longer suit who we are now. And one day, we finally decide to let them go. Not because we didn't love them once, but because we've outgrown them. Relationships can be like that, too. As we age, we become more honest about what fits and what no longer does. That honesty extends to how we spend our time and who we spend it with. It's part of what makes this stage of life so liberating. There's a freedom in not having to prove yourself anymore. You've already built a life. You've already weathered storms, raised children, worked hard, and given your heart to so many things. Now, you get to focus on what matters most to you. And yet, for many older adults, there's also a quiet fear that comes with this shift, the fear of being misunderstood. You might worry that if you say no too often, people will stop inviting you. That if you ask for space, others will think you're lonely, or worse, that you've given up. But let me tell you something. Honoring your needs isn't the same as isolating yourself. Knowing what fills your soul versus what drains it is a kind of emotional intelligence that takes a lifetime to develop. Still, even when we know all of this in our hearts, it can be hard to accept that we're changing. It can feel unsettling to realize that we don't enjoy the same things we once did, that the big family reunions now feel overwhelming, or that long phone calls exhaust us instead of energize us. You might ask yourself, am I withdrawing? Am I losing touch with the world? But here's the beautiful truth. What's actually happening is that your inner world is becoming richer. You're spending more time reflecting, appreciating, and simply being. You're starting to value silence as much as words, and comfort as much as connection. That doesn't mean you've lost your spark. It means your spark is burning in a different way now. It's a softer flame, perhaps, but no less bright. And often, this quiet inner shift leads to one of the most surprising reasons people become less social with age. They're more at peace within themselves. When you're younger, there's often a strong need for external validation, to be liked, to be popular, to feel included. But later in life, that need tends to fade. You become more comfortable in your own skin. You don't need a room full of people to feel seen. You don't need applause to feel worthy. You start enjoying your own company in a way that feels deeply fulfilling. Think about those quiet mornings with a cup of coffee and the sunrise. Or those slow walks where you get to feel the breeze, listen to the birds, and just be. That stillness isn't loneliness, it's presence. And for many people, especially after a lifetime of running around, caring for others, or chasing goals, that kind of peace is priceless. You might even find that you start prioritizing experiences over people, not in a cold or selfish way, but in a very intentional one. Maybe you'd rather spend the afternoon tending to your garden or reading a good novel than going out for lunch with people who don't really see you. Maybe you'd rather visit the local museum, take a painting class, or go for a scenic drive than sit in a noisy restaurant trying to keep up with conversation. That doesn't make you antisocial. It makes you authentic. You're simply choosing moments that resonate with who you are now. And that's one of the greatest gifts of aging. You no longer feel the pressure to follow the crowd. You get to design your days around what brings you joy, peace, and meaning. Of course, that doesn't mean connection isn't important. We're wired for connection. But the kind of connection we seek as we age becomes more intentional, more soulful. It's no longer about quantity, it's about quality. A meaningful conversation with one close friend can mean more than a party full of acquaintances. A warm hug, a shared memory, a handwritten note. These moments start to matter more than the big social scenes. And in that way, becoming more selective about your relationships isn't withdrawal, it's refinement. You're sifting through the noise to make room for what truly nourishes your spirit. And the people who really care about you, they'll understand. They'll notice that your heart is still open, even if your calendar isn't as full. And they'll meet you where you are, not where you used to be. That brings us to something else worth reflecting on: how self-awareness grows with age, and how that changes our social patterns. When you're younger, you might not always recognize why certain people or situations make you feel uneasy. You might just power through, thinking it's normal to feel a little off. But with time, you begin to understand yourself better. You learn which environments lift you up and which ones drain you. You begin to notice when you're forcing yourself to be someone you're not, just to fit in. And once you become aware of that, it's hard to go back. You start to seek alignment between who you are and how you live, and that includes your relationships. You want to spend time with people who allow you to be your full self. No masks, no pretense. You want honesty, warmth, and mutual respect. And when those things aren't present, you don't fake it anymore. You quietly bow out. That kind of self-awareness is powerful. It's the reason so many people feel like they finally know who they are in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. And with that knowing comes a natural desire to protect your energy, your time, and your space. It's not about being less social. It's about being more true to yourself. And yes, sometimes that means spending more time alone. But solitude, when chosen, can be deeply nourishing. It's where creativity blooms. It's where memories surface, where healing happens. It's where you reconnect with your values, your dreams, your essence. It's not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that you're listening to yourself. So here we are, looking at this beautiful truth that as we age, we tend to pull inward not out of bitterness or boredom, but out of wisdom. There's a quiet kind of knowing that settles in, telling you it's okay to slow down, to be more selective, to cherish your energy like the valuable resource it is. And this next point ties into that in such a natural way. You've started to prioritize peace over performance. For most of your life, there's been a kind of expectation to show up, smile, engage, and entertain. Maybe it was at work, where you had to be on all the time, or in your family life, making sure holidays and birthdays were joyful, even if you were exhausted. Or maybe it was in your social circles, dinners, parties, meetings, and all the things that require emotional energy. And you did it because you cared. You showed up. You poured yourself into people, events, and roles because it mattered to you. But at some point, you start to ask yourself, asterisk, do I still need to perform? Or is it okay if I just be? Asterisk. It's such a simple question, but it opens the door to a new kind of freedom. The freedom to show up without having to entertain. To spend time with others without feeling the need to manage the mood. To be yourself, exactly as you are, quiet or talkative, energized or a bit tired, joyful or contemplative. You realize that peace, inner peace, is more important than appearances. And you stop bending yourself to fit other people's expectations. That shift is huge. It changes the way you experience social situations. You might go to fewer gatherings, but the ones you attend feel lighter because you're no longer pressuring yourself to be anything other than yourself. You don't over-explain your choices or apologize for saying no. You stop feeling guilty for needing time to rest. You've earned the right to live life on your terms, without guilt. But here's something important to remember. Just because you value peace doesn't mean you've lost your passion for connection. In fact, many people say that after stepping away from the social noise, they rediscover what true connection feels like. It becomes more intimate, more present. You find yourself having deeper conversations, listening more closely, and really being with the person in front of you. And sometimes, those connections aren't even with people. They're with nature, with art, with memories, with your own spirit. Sitting on your porch watching the leaves fall, hearing an old song, and being taken back to a moment you thought you'd forgotten. Writing in a journal, talking to your grandchild about what life was like when you were their age. These are all forms of connection, just as real, if not more real, than a crowded party or a bustling event. Another powerful reason we may pull back socially as we grow older is we become more sensitive to emotional energy. You might notice this yourself. Certain environments or conversations now feel heavier, louder, or more draining than they used to. Maybe someone's constant complaining starts to weigh on you, or being around too much negativity leaves you feeling unsettled for hours afterward. That's not your imagination. That's your emotional radar becoming more attuned. It's like your spirit is saying, I've carried enough of other people's burdens over the years. I want to travel lighter now. That sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's actually a sign of strength and awareness. You've likely spent a lifetime taking care of others, solving problems, and absorbing stress that wasn't yours to begin with. Now, you recognize when something doesn't sit right, and you're quicker to protect your peace. That might mean stepping away from a friendship that's turned toxic, or declining invitations where you know the environment isn't nurturing. And while that can be hard, especially when loyalty runs deep, it's also deeply healing. Because let's face it, life is too short and too precious to spend in places where your soul feels cramped. And here's the thing, this chapter of your life isn't about loss or shrinking away. It's about refinement. It's about growth in the most soulful sense. You may be seeing fewer people, but you're seeing more clearly. You may be speaking less, but your words carry more weight. You may be moving slower, but with a steadier purpose. One of the most comforting realizations that comes with age is this. You no longer need a crowd to feel complete. You no longer need constant interaction to feel alive. Your identity isn't tied to how busy your schedule is or how many people are around you. You've made peace with solitude, and in doing so, you've found something many people spend their whole lives chasing: contentment. And if that sounds like you, if you've noticed yourself becoming more introspective, more inward, more intentional, please know, you are not alone. In fact, you're in incredibly good company. Millions of people your age are experiencing the same shift. It's part of the natural rhythm of life. Just as spring gives way to summer and summer to fall, your spirit, too, moves through seasons. And this one, it's a season of depth, of calm, of living from the inside out. Now, that's not to say there won't be moments of loneliness. We're human, after all. We all want to feel seen, heard, and loved. But the beauty of being older is that you know how to navigate those feelings now. You've lived through heartache and joy, gain and loss. You know that feelings pass like clouds, and that joy often returns when you least expect it, maybe in the form of a surprise phone call, a shared laugh, or a quiet moment of gratitude. So if you find yourself spending more time alone, please don't mistake it for isolation. If you've been choosing smaller circles or fewer commitments, don't think of it as stepping away from life. You're simply stepping into a more authentic version of it, one that's guided not by pressure, but by peace. And what a beautiful thing that is. In fact, I encourage you to take a moment today to reflect on what brings you peace. What truly fills your heart? Not what used to, but what does now. Maybe it's the sound of your grandkids laughing. Maybe it's the smell of a favorite dish cooking in the kitchen. Maybe it's a handwritten letter, or a quiet walk, or sitting on the porch as the sun sets. Hold on to those moments. Let them be your compass. And if someone in your life doesn't quite understand the changes you're going through, that's okay too. Not everyone will. But the ones who matter, the ones who love you for who you really are, they'll get it. They'll meet you where you are. And more importantly, you'll meet yourself there with grace, patience, and a deep, deep understanding. So thank you for spending this time with me today. If this message spoke to you in any way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you noticed yourself becoming more selective about your time or your relationships as you've gotten older? What brings you the most peace these days? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more heart-to-heart conversations like this. You deserve a life that feels good on the inside, no matter your age. And remember, this season of your life is just as beautiful, just as meaningful as any that came before it. Wishing you joy, comfort, and connection in all the ways that matter most. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.